Welcome back to segment 2 of 3 of Thrive America, here with Chef Marvin Woods. And Chef, we were just talking offline about some of the skills on hosting a show, and I know you've hosted a show for several years.
Yeah, 4 years. I did my own show called Home Plate, and that was on Turner South Network. It's a lot of fun, but one of the things we were talking about is just how you get good at your craft and be your hardest critic.
Right. So I'm very aware of how I'm talking to you now just because of that. And maybe you can offer me some pointers after the show and so forth. So let's talk about getting back to our subject, which is how to thrive in this economy, teaching students, entrepreneurs, and business owners principles on how to do this. And the times are changing with before you could put an ad on a magazine or a billboard, but now we're shifting. And one of the things that other people have talked about is now marketing is more of a conversation, and the power of personal branding. How we can't copy you. We can maybe copy a dish that you create, but we can't copy Chef Marvin Woods.
Exactly.
So there's something to be said about what you're doing and the books that you're putting out there, and I want to talk more about that later.
Okay.
Your next talking point here is don't take the brass ring before you're ready.
Sure.
Chef, what do you mean by this principle?
Well, this is definitely to specifically to young people, the younger generation, those that are looking to go in the culinary industry or hospitality industry. You go to culinary school or you go to a hospitality school, etc. That's just a scratch of the surface. You cannot be an expert or be at the top of your game if you don't have on-hands experience in my business. This is not an industry where you can get all A's and then come out and go, okay, I'm going to run a 2-star rated restaurant. It's not going to happen. Whether you're in the back of the house, whether you're in front of the house, whether you're at the bar. So, yeah, your dad's friend or even your dad or your uncle, somebody has money and go, hey, you know what? When you get out of school, let's go do a restaurant. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because, and that's one of the instances of the brass ring to us. Having your own store, having your own restaurant. You don't know enough. You don't have enough hands-on experience. The one thing that I tell people all the time about our business is, yes, a good part of it is book, but then you have to practice it. For example, quick example, you go to culinary school. Culinary schools, it's 5 hours or 6 hours in a day, 7 hours in a day. And you'll learn how to make a sauce. And we'll talk about the mother sauces. So there's 5 mother sauces, what we call mother sauce. And that sauce, you can make a lot of different sauces from it. We call those derivatives, okay? But in culinary school, you get an hour and a half to go make a sauce. In a restaurant, you got 5 minutes to make that same sauce. And you got to do it every day. And you can't break the sauce. Well, the only way you get good at that is by doing it over and over and over again. It's just like being an athlete. It's about muscle response. The better athletes practice that foul shot every day, 1,000 times, 2,000 times, etc. So when they're in the game, they don't even think twice. It's just automatic. Same thing in our industry. There's so much to learn in our industry about being a chef, about being a manager, about being a bar manager, whatever. You have to have that hands-on experience.
And I hear the word discipline.
Yes.
And being methodical.
Yes.
In your personal journey and in your career path. Your next point here is drive, will, and determination. Chef, what do you mean by this principle here?
Well, at the end of the day, you have to have the initiative to want to be better at what you're doing. You want to learn your craft and be the best at your craft. So you have to have some drive to push yourself. And so if you're working at a 2-star rated restaurant today, then you do that for a year and a half. I mean, this is our philosophy. This is our rule of thumb. This is how I learned. Okay, so you work for a chef or in an entity for a year and a half, 2 years tops. Why? Because now you've learned as much as you can from that particular individual in that restaurant. Now you need to go work at another restaurant, either on the same level or higher, to learn more. If you just stay in this place for 5 years or 7 years, you're going to be limited in your growth. You're going to be limited in what you can learn. So you have to have that drive to go, okay, it's time to move on, and you have to know that. The will it takes you to get up and work in a restaurant 12 hours, 14 hours a day. It takes a little bit of will. You know, the average person has to train themselves. One of the first things that I learned when we went to culinary school, the instructor said, okay, for those who need 8 hours of sleep, either think about going into another industry or recondition your mind that you only need at least 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours, because that's how we live in our business. 6, 7 days a week you work in good places. You know, I spent 4 years in Europe. In Europe, we work splits. A split is you go to work at 9 or 8 o'clock in the morning. You do lunch service, so you get off at 2 or 3. You get 2 hours break. You come back and work dinner service from 5 to 12. That's the business. And so these are the things that I tell people. You got to have some drive and some will to do that, you know, and determination. I mean, you have to.
So I'm just hearing you speak is that your industry is, and I've worked at a restaurant before as a server,
right?
And it's so intense.
Yes.
But the principles that you're sharing can be applied to any business. So be prepared for that longevity.
Sure. Well, okay. Let's say you want to be an attorney or a doctor. Yeah, there's a whole lot of schooling that's involved, but you still have to have hands-on experience. And look at the hours that doctors work. I mean, you have a beeper because you're on call. I mean, you have to recondition yourself. Once you leave mom and dad's house and you go into the real world, if you want to be at the top of your game in any industry, it's going to take a lot of hours and a little bit of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your next point here is staying true to the game.
Yeah.
What do you mean by this?
Well, there's a word that we use in our industry called hacks. You know, a hack is somebody that wants to cut corners. Staying true to the game, working in solid, real restaurants and working your way up. Not getting caught up in, well, I work at this particular restaurant and I'm a sous chef, but you can't cook. You can't boil water. I mean, and this happens a lot. I see people that walk around and they have this title. It's like, okay, well, you got 4 or 5 years in the business. Really, how did you get to this point? So being true to the game is really learning the craft and just being the best at what it is that you do. When you work in a European-style kitchen, we have what we call a brigade system. And the brigade system is different sections of the kitchen. So you come in as a commis. A commis is, you know, somebody's going to peel potatoes or whatever. Then you work up to a demi-chef de partie. Demi is half of a person that's in charge of a station. So there's so many stations. There's grillé, there's poissonnier, which is fish. There's entremetier, which is vegetables. You got to learn all these stations before you can even think about calling yourself a sous chef, before you can call yourself a chef. So being true to the game is learning your craft, learning how to make sauces, learning how to cook vegetables 1,001 ways, the right way. You know, that's being true to the game.
Yeah, and like you said, not to cut
intense.
corners. Yeah, I know. It's like, I'm intimidated.
It's intense stuff, man.
But whatever industry, whatever course you choose,
sure,
don't cut corners.
No,
don't cheat. And there's a lot of that. But you're gonna lose respect by your peers.
Totally, the carpet is gonna be pulled out from under you eventually. You know. You can cut the corners, but eventually you're going to get into a position and you're going to be making decent money, and then somebody's going to realize that you don't know what the hell you're doing. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're working for a family person, that might work. But if you're working in corporate America, if you're working for, you know, mainstream, you're going to lose your job.
And take pride in that. Take pride in being true to the game.
You have to.
And that's going to serve you. Before we cut, your last point here is practice. We have a few minutes to discuss. Actually, we don't. I'm gonna cut you off here. We're gonna come back and talk about practice. We're gonna talk about some of your aspirations to open up your own restaurant,
sure,
and so forth. So we'll be right back with Chef Marvin Woods in just a minute.